In today's video, we take a look at the original and very collectible Games Workshop Ash Wastes Nomads, first introduced in Necromunda Magazine Issue 3 over 20 years ago. Well, hi folks, I'm Lee, your Oldhammer host. Welcome to the channel. So a couple of weeks ago, we posted a short 60-second video on these classic Ash Wastes Nomads you see here that were introduced by Games Workshop in 2001, though they were only available through mail order, as I understand it. So I've kind of been acquiring these minis secondhand over the years, sort of piecemeal. I knew there were Necromunda rules written for them out there somewhere, but I didn't have a copy of them, so I didn't really make these particular minis that much of a priority. They kind of languished in storage for a while, until we got the announcement that Games Workshop was reintroducing a new version of the Ash Wastes Nomads, so that kind of got me inspired again. Plus, after searching for a long time, I finally got my hands on a copy of Necromunda Magazine Issue 3. I picked that up about a week ago, so now I have an original copy of the Ash Wastes Nomads rules, along with some of the original advertisements and photographs of the Ash Wastes Nomads. Now, I believe the original rules themselves you can probably find by digging around on some of the Necromunda fan forums. There's probably some PDFs and compilations out there. But I'm not sure if those include the mail order ads and the color guide and some other little things like that. So that's some of the stuff we're going to take a look at today. So by now you probably heard that Games Workshop is releasing a full Ash Wastes box set expansion for Necromunda sometime in 2022, to be followed by a series of expansions after that, no doubt including other factions and vehicles and all kinds of good stuff. So one of the factions in the new box set is going to be the revamped and reimagined Ash Wastes Nomads, which is frankly amazing because they were such a minor faction back in first edition Necromunda. You couldn't even find them at a retail store. You had to call up Games Workshop mail order and get them that way, which would be hard to do if you weren't reading Necromunda Magazine and had no idea they existed in the first place. Anyway, I think this is a pretty smart move on Games Workshop's part. They had the IP for the Ash Wastes Nomads, now they're repurposing them on a larger scale, and it opens up all kinds of gameplay possibilities outside the walls of the Hive cities. So for example, the Nomads themselves are outlaws who make a living attacking shanty towns and caravans. They occasionally raid the Hive cities by sneaking in through pipes and such. They're out in the desert digging for lost technology and crashed spaceships and all kinds of good stuff. And they also make a few bucks acting as couriers and smugglers. So if you have something really valuable that can fit in a backpack and you need to get it from one hive to another undetected, an Ash Wastes Nomad may be the way to go, though it's very risky. Now, of course, while the Nomads are out there living their best lives and performing their misdeeds and malpractices, they are going to run into adversaries like these Orlock prospectors here on some kind of a quad. And the Orlocks are the other faction included in the new Necromunda box set. So Games Workshop actually used the words, quote, "vehicular carnage awaits," unquote, when describing the upcoming Necromunda Ash Wastes expansion. So that to me implies there's going to be a lot of Mad Max / Gaslands type vibe. So anybody who likes the idea of building and kit bashing wasteland vehicles is probably going to get a big kick out of it. Okay, so there's new Ash Wastes Nomads on the way. And here's what they looked like some 21 years ago. So as you can see, they still have their hoodies, their respirators, their wasteland accoutrements. So actually the new designs haven't changed all that much from the old ones, though perhaps these guys here look a bit more like Tusken Raiders, and they're a bit more raggedy. But hey, they've been hiding out in the Ash Wastes for the last 20 years, so yeah, there's going to be some changes. One of which may involve scale, since the old metal Necromunda minis tend to be a little smaller than the current 40K plastics. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to blend a clan of old Nomads and new Nomads without them looking a little bit wonky. Alright, let's go all the way back to where it began. 2001, Necromunda Magazine Issue 3, and the first real appearance of the Ash Wastes Nomads, though they were mentioned in Issue 2, I believe. So the issue kicks off with some suggestions on how to paint and model Ash Wastes Nomads. These guys typically carry all their possessions with them, so they have a lot of pouches and belts and backpacks. They typically have respirators, which are necessary to breathe the toxic atmosphere outside the hive cities, and they choose colors that will allow them to blend in with the huge piles of ash waste that have accumulated over thousands of years of heavy industry on Necromunda. Next, the issue gets into a pretty interesting article on the ecology, climate, and inhabitants of the Ash Wastes. The ash itself apparently is mostly composed of metal oxides, powdered plastics, and inorganic chemicals that have accumulated over the millennia, and it will corrode the flesh off your bones, especially if you're in the middle of an ash waste storm. Underneath all that ash, however, is a veritable treasure trove of buried caravans, lost and forgotten hive cities, wrecked spacecraft of unknown origin, and even deposits of raw materials that have accumulated within the ash piles themselves that are all worth digging up and selling at the hive cities or in these shanty towns that surround them. And speaking of shanty towns, they're the place to go if you want to conduct your business outside the rules of the hive city, though you will face some risks from raiders, mutants, and giant beasts, as well as the ash storms, so keep that in mind. So here is the mail order ad from Necromunda Magazine Issue 3. Notice there on the left, you see a gang leader, a nomad leader, with one of the double-bladed knives, and that's one of the special weapons you can buy for this gang. I do not have one of those. I'd like to have one of those. And notice that each character there, each figure, has a special number, and so you would just call up a Games Workshop mail order, give them the product number you need, and they would set that up for you so you could buy these guys all individually. Now, coming up here on the right, you see some of the weapon sprues. So a lot of these guys came without hands, and so you would pick the hand and the weapon that you wanted, and then just glue that hand and weapon onto the poor guy's empty wrist socket. So in that way, you could kit out every member of your gang the way you wanted. And if you look there on the right, it says that heavy weapons were supplied randomly, but if you call them, they would set you up with a specific heavy weapon, which is very nice. So that is GW's Ash Wastes Nomads mail order ad from Necromunda Magazine Issue 3. And I'm thinking this might be the only place it appeared, or one of the only places, because I've never seen it before. Next, we move on to the Ash Wastes Nomads stats and rules. So these are the stats you need to create your Ash Wastes Nomads gang, including your leaders, your heavies, your regulars, and your juves. Now here's a picture of some motorcycles, which is kind of prescient because in Necromunda Magazine Issue 5, they have suggestions on how to convert marine and orc bikes to create an Ash Wastes Nomads biker gang, which seems a lot cooler to me than having the Ash Wastes Nomads run around on the backs of giant sand fleas, as in the upcoming incarnation. But that's just me. Who's to say? Next, there's another Games Workshop mail order ad, this time focusing on talarn and conversion bits for making talarn into some of your Ash Wastes Nomads proxies, so you can flesh out your gang a little bit. So there's some pretty cool ideas in here, and I wish we could get some of these parts today by just calling up and rattling off a number. Talarn Rough Riders, for example, are very useful if you do want to have Ash Wastes Nomads riding various beasts. The missionary backpacks there on the left would represent all the gear your nomads need to carry. And then the gunners can be proxied in as buggy drivers, which we'll get to here in a moment. Yeah, I'd be really interested in converting some talarn to be Ash Nomad proxies, but those talarn parts are probably very expensive these days. I don't think I could afford it. So here are some custom buggy conversions using hand-built parts as well as components from orc war buggies, bikes, trucks, and even Imperial Guard sentinels. Lynn and I have had a lot of fun kit-bashing vehicles for Gasland, so the idea of creating some Ash Wastes Nomads buggies and such sounds pretty appealing. Here they recommend some useful buggy parts that you could buy by the sprue back at the time, and I wish we could still do that, but fortunately we have found some alternatives, and we're going to reveal those in a future video. Our plan is to build a small fleet of Necromunda-type Ash Wastes Nomad vehicles, and then have some sort of a Gorka Morka / Mad Max / Gaslands type scenario. I hear the old Necromunda vehicle rules can be a little clunky, but we'll see how they go. Alright folks, thanks as always for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed today's video. We'll be back soon with some more tabletop wargaming goodness, but until then, take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you next time.